All right, back again. Good morning, everybody. Thanks again for sticking in here, particularly for our START volunteers, which we have many in the crowd. So I'm looking forward to your questions. I've already had a few over here on the sidebar. So let's talk about START. That's in Hopkinton. And my name is Mark Richards, the segment coordinator for START this year. Here are the metrics. START houses 30,000 runners all in one place, all in one time. That's a lot of porta potties. We have 1,000 volunteers roughly, and among those 1,000 volunteers are about 100 or so BAA staff and contractors and so on. 40 of us, amateur radio communications volunteers, are at START. And believe me, every public safety agency known to the human race is there in one capacity or the other. I remember my first year, I was in a trailer like I am every year. That's probably the best place to put me, is in a cold, dark place. And someone said, "Why don't you just step outside and look up at the roof?" And I said, "Why would I do that?" "Just do it." I stepped outside and I looked up at the roof, and there were 3 men there, and they had rifles. I think they call them snipers. I get back into the trailer really fast. I'm not staying out there. Anyway, they're there to help us. Okay, the management, just real quick at START. We have the race director, actually for the entire event, Dave McGillivray. Andy Deschaines is one of my bosses. He's the entire area manager for the START segment. And then we have Joe Robertson, my direct report. He's in the Athletes Village, along with our communications team. Bob Barnaby and Larry Murphy occupy similar positions there on the management staff. And then under all of them, we have our amateur radio volunteers and others. In communications, Joe's my direct report again, and there I am with the assistant coordinator. This year it's Dave Gilman, KC1DDH, sitting up front here. And we have our staff in the trailer. We have CTLs out in the field, and of course, all of our communications folks. So, START is very diverse. It's where all those runners are in one place at one time. In the process of putting this all together and getting these runners from wherever they're coming from to what's called the Athletes Village before they're actually brought up to the start line to be released in stages is a huge process. There's a couple weeks of setup even before this happens. You have to transport them in. You have to take care of them. If there's any medical issues. We had actually a runner last year, only one that was hurt. He was hurt and he didn't even make it to the start line. He pulled a hamstring, if you can believe that. That poor guy, I was talking to him and he had a great attitude. He said, "I'm just going to be back next year." He said, "That's okay." And you got to stage everything and then do the releases of the runners and then, of course, clean up. Fortunately, we don't have to pick up the cups and whatever clothing is left, but we have to take our equipment out. All of the operations at START are very rigidly timed and they're somewhat complex, and so we need that efficient real-time communications in order to support the operations between many, many independent units in a very, very wide geographical footprint. And that communications really has to be fail-safe and flexible. Meaning, fail-safe means that it's really got to be clear and it's got to work the first time, and yet we've got to be able to kind of meander a little bit, particularly in the timing. If there's a delay in a release for some reason, then everything falls back. If it's delayed 10 minutes, everything in the schedule gets pushed back 10 minutes, and so we need to accommodate that very quickly. There's a lot of talented people there with many disciplines. We have a wide mix of constituencies that we serve in communications there, but we have one single mission, and it's this, Jim Palmer will appreciate, which is, as he says, you send them to us and we'll do the rest on course. So there you go. And we'll do that this year. We're going to get them all out. All right. So if the runner is successful, our mission at START is successful. And that, I think, is paramount in my mind this year. But our primary mission is safety. Safety, safety. It's safety first for us, for those that we're serving, but we got to really, think about that. That is one of our big missions. And the other, of course, obviously, is our reliable, efficient communication service. We want to work with a professionalism that helps people remember us. They're going to remember the great work that we did and how we interacted with them and served them. All of our volunteers really need to understand and respond to wide-ranging needs, and you kind of need to learn those as you go along as well. And finally, I know it sounds silly, but don't screw up, please. You know, that's just, we're trying not to screw up. Okay. Here's the focus areas of our communications team at START. Again, there's a wide geographical area and a lot of phases to the operations. Situational awareness has been mentioned again and again and again. I'll say it one more time. Every operator in the field and our NCOC staff really need to be aware of what's going on at any one time. And if you're a communications assistant, which most of the folks up there are, you have a BAA or other principal with you, or you're with them all the time. And maybe you're listening to their commercial radio as well as the amateur radio system, and you appraise them of what's going on that might pertain to their area. That's the kind of situational awareness we're talking about, and also report back anything that you feel is pertinent for others to know. We have a couple of new things that start this year, which I don't know if Brett was aware of it, and maybe it wasn't worth mentioning in his intro, but we do have something called SIRS, or Start Event Reporting System, and every one of our START volunteers is going to become very familiar with this. Essentially, you're going to get a laminated card, and that's going to have time, event number, and event description on it. And depending on where you are, you're actually going to report in at a specific time as to whether that event occurred. Since everything happens in a timed and staged manner, you may be at a position where runners are staged there and then move out. And so you may, in fact, be asked to report when they move out through the various phases. And so that'll come through the communication system. And this situational awareness information is extremely critical. It came into play last year as a big need, and this year it's something we're going to provide to the BAA, and they're very happy about that. We also have our downfill safety team. Tom Kinahan, sitting over here, is our team leader. Tom, you have 5 people total in your group, and Tom has been doing this with his team for many years. Well, you say, you know, how many? You know, but it's a lot of years, right? A few years, anyway. And he's no spring chicken to this particular event and role. It's a great team. What they do is they make sure that the safety corridor, or that first half mile of the event, is actually clear to release runners onto it. And I'll get to that in a little more detail in a moment. We have medical. We have a medical team in the village area. And we also augment EMS dispatch, which Rob mentioned earlier. We also integrate with public safety, as do all of our other teams as well. There are 2 unified command centers at our START, and those 2 both have our representatives in them. And if there's an evacuation or other contingency, we assist with the communications in that event at the direction of the UCC. Okay. Situational awareness. What I say is, what you don't know can bite you in the end. Okay, so it's important kind of to know what's going on. Our assets for situational awareness are the trained boots on the ground. That's you. The commercial radio system is another asset of information, and the UCCs come into that because, of course, they need this information, which helps them make their decisions. In terms of what you're going to report and how you're going to report it, well, you're going to report observed facts, not impressions. So don't say I think, I believe, but say I hear, I see, and hopefully not, I smell. You know, okay? If you smell, go upwind, please. You know, it could be the person next to you, but please go upwind, you know? No rumors, no third-party info. We just don't need it. Fred told me that this was this. Well, you know, I'm sorry, but that's sort of way, way down there in terms of verification. It's an open channel. Be cautious. Consider the implications of what you report. Okay. Communications assistant, that's the CA, and they are at start and actually also at finish and throughout the event. How much time? 2 minutes, oh boy. Okay. The CA is a communications concierge for your client. It allows them to focus on their job. Just like the procedures controller in the NCOC, it relieves them of having to play around with radios and phones and so on. They may hand you your radio, they may not, but you are definitely important to them and critical, particularly in a contingency. The START event reporting system I talked about, I'm not going to go into it here. Downfield safety, I'm going to skip it because we're running out of time. The medical at START. Andy Deschaines, my boss, said it at our last captain's meeting. 911 is the first line of access at START. All the volunteers there are told that. You use 911 first. Of course, if you have a police officer, which you probably will, or a fire, whatever, next to you, you know, they're in charge and they can take care of that. Okay? If you're an amateur radio operator and you don't have anyone to assist you with that, you come through the amateur radio network with your medical call. There are 2 medical teams. There's a stationary one at the Athletes Village. They're in 2 tents. And then we have an away team as part of that group. And then the Hopkinton Fire Department EMS handles all of the EMS for that area. We are the auxiliary dispatch for that. We have a very good managed, documented, and QA assured plan. So when it goes in, we know that it's going to go out quickly. It's a hot potato. We also know it's going to be tracked. We are integrated, as I said, in public safety, so we are present in 2 centers. There's a primary and a secondary UCC, and they have various roles that I'm not going to get into here. On the evacuation contingency side, if the OSHIT happens, then the UCC really becomes our network control center. We're out of that. Control reverts to public safety when it's a public safety issue. So we may be asked to shut up, or we may be asked to provide information. We take our orders from them, okay? And I think that's it, other than to say it is huge fun. START volunteers, I think, are among the most fortunate because they get to see the runners before they've collapsed. You know, it's always good to be able to talk to somebody who's vertical, you know. You're not going to be bored. You're going to have a good time. There's a lot of people, 30,000 to interact with, and I think you're going to really enjoy START. So that's it. And should I ask for questions, or are you going to hold? Okay, good. Thank you very much.